Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pink and this episode of Terrace Talk ahead of a meeting with Stoke this weekend. It should be a very interesting one. Norwich City, obviously not in the best form after a defeat to Wrexham last time out at Carrow Road, but they've got a decent record away from home, and that will give them confidence going to Stoke. Although the Potters have started the season very well indeed, they're currently second in the Championship. And to tell us more about it, I'm delighted to be joined by Lucas Yeomans, who, among other things, is a presenter for BBC Radio Stoke and discusses Stoke City. Lucas, thanks very much for joining us. It feels like probably it must be a good time to report on Stoke City.
It's a lot of fun. It is. The fact that they have been in every game, even the ones they've lost, has been quite a treat, because you'll know this from when you've played Stoke previously. Most times, in fact, in recent history, Stoke haven't really shown up against Norwich. So I'm hoping that won't be the case tomorrow, because this is allegedly a new and improved side. But yeah, it's been quite nice because it's not been what has sort of become same old Stoke in the Championship. This year has initially felt a little different.
Yeah. Has it been tempered at all by the last few games? Obviously, it's 2 losses out of 3. So is that kind of affecting the mood at all, or is it still largely pretty positive?
Do you know what's funny? That's the first time that's been put to me in that way, like 2 losses out of 3. It's because I think that Stoke I've had this chat a few times now. I think the narrative can be whatever you want it to be. So whereas Stoke would see they've won the first 4 games of the league season, obviously from an outside, that's a really good point. And I think because they played so well against Birmingham, and they weren't bad at all against West Brom. QPR has differed in opinions. So I think some fans would have said they were all right. I think others were not so pleased. Manager Mark Robins said it was the worst performance of the season to us on the radio. So that's clearly how he felt about it. So there's a bit of there's a bit more optimism, I think, despite that's a valid statistic, because they've looked good in every game they've played, even in flashes against QPR. That first half an hour against Birmingham, especially because of the interest around Birmingham City this season, really impressed a lot of Stoke fans. Like someone even texted me saying that's the best half an hour Stoke City have played since being back in the Championship. So we are dealing with a side that is currently, exceeding expectations that Stoke fans have had on the team.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of underlines the importance of performance as well as result. If you can kind of come through those defeats and there's still that positivity there, but obviously being second in the table will help with that as well. You referenced the fact that definitely. But you referenced the fact that it's kind of it's different. It feels different to maybe how it has for Stoke over the last few years in the Championship. Obviously, a good stint now in the second tier, and probably the sort of run that Norwich fans are quite worried they're going to replicate, given the fact this is their 4th consecutive Championship season now. I mean, what do you think looks different this season to what it has over the last few years for Stoke?
Do you know what? Firstly, they are doing the basics right. So they're attacking within 10. They've got players now that are capable of doing what the manager is asking of them. And they've had enough managers that have had different plans and different ideas. But on the pitch, they've just got everyone that seems to be following a game plan and sticking with it. And they clearly believe in what they're being told to do. What I think has been a real big difference maker and a really important part of Stoke this season is that Mark Robins, obviously a former player for Norwich, has been everything that Coventry City fans said he would be. Yeah. Just in terms of how he's elevated not just the players but the whole football club. I'm lucky enough to know a lot of people that work at the club. I'm talking those behind the scenes. I'm talking ground staff. I'm talking stewards. I'm talking a real host. A lot of them are Stoke fans, and they talk about the culture being so different. Now that isn't just down to Mark Robins. John Walters has put he's the sporting director. Obviously, he used to play for Stoke too in the Premier League. Yeah. He's put a massive impetus on making sure that this is a good place to work. That there'd been, I'll say speculation because none of it was ever confirmed, but there'd been speculation that it wasn't a nice place to be when actually 2 former members of Norwich City, Alex Neil and Ricky Martin, were in charge, and they did a lot of recruitment. And I think it's well documented that some of the players didn't really fit in either. None of the atmosphere was. I'd go as far to say toxic. The atmosphere was a little bit back then. I think Mark Robins has put a real effort into making sure that everyone is, to coin a cliche, singing from the same hymn sheet. It feels for the first time in a very long time that everyone's on the same page. Everyone believes in the same identity on the pitch and off the pitch. And I think that's why players are buying into what the managers want, because Stoke have had good managers in the past that you can't deny. You've seen what Nathan Jones has done in some of his jobs. Michael O'Neill is a very competent manager and did a very good job at Stoke, to be fair. It's the closest I've seen to Stoke singing from the same hymn sheet. And Gary Rowett, he's like another example of a proven championship manager. Like they're not bad managers. Alex Neil isn't a bad manager by all means. I mean, he did so well with Norwich in the time he was there. But there just was something not right with the culture of Stoke City. And I feel it like currently, from everything I hear, it is a place right now where the culture's right. And so that means that there's no outside noise and the players can buy into what they're being told to do.
Was there any doubt or frustration with Robins and maybe questions over his future last season? Because obviously he came in and it didn't get loads better for Stoke. Obviously they managed to stay in the Championship in the end, but given results, obviously it's they've skyrocketed so far this season, but last season was there kind of frustration? Because I think it's an interesting parallel with Norwich, who've obviously now got Liam Manning, who's slightly less proven than Mark Robins, but also came from the Championship, had success at other clubs, and it looks like right now is taking a little bit of time to kind of acclimatise and to get the team looking how he wants. So how much frustration was there with last season, or was it just a case that fans were willing to be patient?
No, there was a fear of more of the same, because it has just been more of the same, and I think the Mark Robins one they were really scared of, because like this guy, as you say, has been successful in a Coventry City team that he needed to rebuild from the ground up, and Stoke should have had the resources that would have enabled him to do what he did and further. Which is now looking the case. It did not look the case. I mean, when they went to Carrow Road, they were pretty bad. Stoke were from memory. So, so I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have given many out of Stoke City fans either, that sort of belief in the football club. I think that's done Stoke a favour, actually, being the underdogs this year. But there were many Stoke fans that were looking on. All they could do was believe in what they were being told. But the reason that they didn't buy into it as much as they are now is because you were told to believe in Gary Rowett, and then Nathan Jones, and then Michael O'Neill, and then Alex Neil, and then Stephen Schumacher, and then Narcissus Palak. So, it's almost like, how many times are we going to be told it's going to get better this time? And there've been public backing for a lot of the managers that have gone before. So the public backing for Mark Robbins kind of felt just like talk until you were going to see it. It was just wordplay. So I think expectations had reached another low point at the end of last season. It was the game against Derby at the end of last year really summarised the season for Stoke. Really, just sort of just drab and unexciting and disappointing. The game against Derby at the start of this season, I'm hoping, is going to be something that epitomises what Stoke City are this year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, you referenced the kind of resources that Robins has at his fingertips at Stoke, and probably that's what a lot of managers have looked forward to when they've gone there. Alex Neil, obviously, you referenced him, formerly of Norwich, basically left Sunderland because of the financial pull from Stoke and kind of the resources available that can be spent on players. But I know there have been kind of some close brushes with kind of financial rules and stuff like that, and probably they've had to almost manage the wealth available to a certain extent. So what's that looking like now? Does Robins have kind of a blank check to go and spend as much as he wants, or are they still kind of battling with those rules a little bit at the moment?
It'll be I think the next summer will be the third one since when Alex Neil and Ricky Martin came in, actually. So when they both arrived just before that summer, it was the first summer since I think Stoke had come down, they're able to spend again, because the first season, what they did is they splashed all that cash. They bought in Sam Clucas, James McLean, Tom Ince, Benica Phobie, countless others that none of which really went to plan. And then they were hamstrung by what was FFP, now PSR, for those 3 seasons. Once that had been wiped off and they were able to spend again, they did the same, but they thought they'd learned their lessons. So they used not quite a data model, I would say, as such, but they used a little bit more sort of out of the box thinking with the head of recruitment they had at the time, alongside Ricky Martin, who was technical director, alongside Alex Neil, manager. They were trying to adopt something like a Brighton model, but I don't think they'd fully. I don't know exactly what they were using to identify these players, but I don't think, from what we've seen now, the due diligence was done, because a lot of the players sort of weren't. Not all of them. Some of them were brilliant, but a lot of them sort of weren't up to the task. And so, but they spent like nearly 20 million again, and then that hamstrings you for the next year. So last season, when John Walters first came in as sporting director, he had limited resources to do anything. This year, they sold Wouter Berger, who has been one of the success stories from that summer spending, and Sol Sidibé, who's an academy product. That's obviously that's just straight up profit. So next summer is when they can maybe spend. I think the lessons will be, unless they do get promoted this year, and who's to say they can't with the way the season started. If they are in the Championship next year, I think they'll be cautious to not overdo it, and they spread out their costs a little bit better, because the temptation when you've got the money and the resources that Stoke have is to, when you've got, okay, green light, go, spend as much as you can, you then hamstring yourself for the next few seasons. So I think they're going to be, and I think Stoke fans will be more okay with this if they are in the Championship for a few years, rather than just spend a load of money next summer. I think they're going to be a little bit more smart about it. They've got a really good data department now as well that they're working under Ian Torrance and John Walters. So steps are in place to make sure that the 2 summers of spending don't need to happen again, and they can be smart and still have good summers. Like, I think, again, going off the first couple of games, they seem to have had this year, which has been really smart, using a bit of the money they've earned from recouping it from selling players, and some nice loans as well, some really nice loans that they've done.
Yeah, definitely. I also wanted to ask you about another former Norwich player, and that's Ben Gibson, who obviously arrived at Stoke summer 2024, having left Norwich at the end of his contract. Probably someone who divided opinion a little bit in Norwich. I think probably injuries did for him really in the end, after a couple of really impressive seasons in a Norwich shirt. It's been now just over a year that he's been a Stoke player. So how's he got on?
It's such a shame, Ben Gibson, because I remember speaking to him when he first joined the football club, and he spoke about the fact that, bar a little bit of an injury blip at Norwich, he hadn't really suffered injuries throughout his career. And he was hoping that it wouldn't repeat itself at Stoke, and it did. And for the start of the first 6 months, I mean, he was given the captain's armband straight away, and it's no. It's clear to me why he was, because from speaking to him, I mean, he's a great guy, and I mean that. He's a really great guy, really down to earth. I mean, for people like you and I, Samuel, he's a dream to interview, because he's very honest, and he gives you a lot in terms of information and in terms of his thoughts, and he's not just the sort of the blank robotic answers that you can sometimes get when you do those sort of chats with footballers. I can see why he's given the captain's armband. I can see why he's become a team leader, and he is still the club captain. But he was suffering with injuries a little bit when Mark Robbins came in, and then wasn't really ever able to retain the shirt once he became fit again. Ashley Phillips and Ben Wilmot were the partnership, and Ben Wilmot's been given the captain's armband in place of Ben Gibson, and he plays typically as the left-sided centre-back at the moment for Stoke, even though he's a right-footer, Ben Wilmot. So there's little reason to think that Ben Gibson would usurp Ben Wilmot's starting place at the moment. And Stoke's defence has started off so well. They've got 2 centre-backs, one the returning Ashley Phillips, one Maxi Talavera, that came in with a lot of excitement. People thought they were going to be the starting 2 centre-backs, and Bosun the Wall and Ben Wilmot have been brilliant, so they've not got a look in. Ben Wilmot's probably 5th choice centre-back right now, and he is the club captain, but he started the summer with an injury too. So injuries and other players sort of dominating in his position has meant that we've not really seen much of him since the start of last season, which is a great shame because again he's a top professional, but just I think age and injuries maybe sort of catch up with him. He's got another year in his contract too after this season, so the future of Ben Gibson, I suppose, is one you can speculate more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like similar themes to what he was at Norwich, to be fair, in terms of the really positive side of the professionalism and the personality, but just struggling with those injuries and the physical side probably towards the back end of his career. But to focus on this weekend, I always find it really interesting to see what sort of opposition fans and reporters and things make of games against Norwich, because whenever they're in the Championship, it's very easy to say, big club at this level, and you hear every single manager when they beat Norwich, which has tended to happen a few times over the last few years, come out and they say, it's a great win to beat this type of club at this level. But it feels now almost like, I referenced it earlier, Norwich are on a worryingly similar trajectory to what Stoke were when they first came down from the Premier League, and to me, it doesn't feel like probably there's going to be as much fear of Norwich going forward in games. So I'm interested to see how you and how Stoke fans, look ahead to this game, because for me, looking at it with the kind of negative momentum that Norwich have, with how well Stoke have started, and the fact that they're at home, it feels like they're quite significant favourites. But is there still a little bit of a fear factor about Norwich at Stoke?
Yeah, because Norwich are always really good against Stoke. So either home or away, there's that little bit of fear that you're just going to be good again. Although I think this is you're right in what you say, aren't you? From an outsider's perspective, I would say as well. This is probably the lowest opinion that fans have had, outsiders have had of Norwich, probably since you came down. And I'm surprised at that, because I think I'll have to go back and check, but I'm sure when I did my Championship predictions for the very start of the season, I think I had Norwich sneaking into the playoffs because it is such a, Blackburn Rovers nearly got a playoff spot last year, didn't they? So it's one of those where anyone can kind of get in there. Yeah. I did predict Stoke to finish, I want to say 9th, maybe 10th. So it doesn't mean it was sort of based on much, but Liam Manning, I thought had a good year last year with Bristol City, and Norwich have always been there or thereabouts bar last year. So I thought maybe last year would have been a blip. And even last year, both times Norwich are really impressive. Stoke, it's funny you said that, because when Stoke drew against Norwich at the Bet365 Stadium last season, everyone was saying what a good point that was. What a great performance to do that against Norwich. That was what all the Stoke fans were saying. The season before, you absolutely thrashed Stoke City away from home. So there's a little bit of worrying flashbacks whenever Norwich come to the Bet365 Stadium. Whether they can break that sort of hoodoo tomorrow is the question. And there is more expectation this time that they can, because of Norwich's start to the season. Although I think away from home is a lot better than at home, isn't it, for Norwich? Yeah. Obviously, you've got Josh Sargent, so obviously that's something that people are aware of as well. Yeah. And Stoke fans are bitter because he beat Sorba Thomas to Player of the Month in August. So there's not many Stoke fans that I think are expecting a win. There's probably more than usual that are hoping for a win or are hopeful of getting 3 points tomorrow. That's kind of where it is at the moment, with the way that Stoke have been playing and the way that Norwich has started. And I'm in a few Stoke City group chats, and we know what social media is like, where there's an air of someone says that someone might be leaving, or in this case that Liam Manning might be going, and all these Stoke City fans were debating about whether he'll still be in the job come Saturday, which I'm sure you've spoken about those. I think they were pretty nothing rumours in the end, but it's just it's more, that's more Stoke City fans sort of looking for a reason to believe and speculate on where Norwich are. Thing is, with the Championship, you never know what team you're really gonna face or what you're going to be until the day. Like Stoke are a great example of that. Better at this year, but you can be blown away by a team, and then they go on and lose the next 4 games, and you're thinking, how is this the same side? Yeah. So there's tentative optimism about tomorrow with Norwich coming to the Bet365, but I think because of how previous games have gone, and that Norwich are a bit like Stoke, one of the heavyweights in the Championship.
Mm.
It's not one that's like seen as 3 points tomorrow.
Yes, that is kind of interesting. And with that in mind, I'm going to finish by asking you for a score prediction. But to give you a few seconds to think about it, I'll just provide the context that I actually said 2-1 Stoke on our preview show that we've just done. I don't think there's loads of optimism from Norwich fans and probably from Norwich reporters, unfortunately, as well. Just with the kind of injuries that they've got, probably the bad form, and also the fact that, to be fair to Stoke, they've just started the season really well, and I think people are wary of that. So, Lucas, what do you reckon for the score tomorrow?
So you went 2-1.
Yeah.
Your colleague Connor went for 2-1 Norwich, I think, when I
Did he?
spoke to him on the radio. Yeah,
Fair
I'm
play.
sure he said that. I think it was more that he said that he couldn't face going against Norwich on a rival radio station. So I
Okay.
think that was his reason.
Yeah.
2-0 is what stood out to me, but I think I don't think that sounds more flattering than I think the game will be tomorrow. And there's the Josh Sargent factor where I could see him maybe scoring. So I feel like I don't want to copy Samuel, but I think 2-1 currently feels like the most sensible. I think Stoke City fans, as long as Stoke play well, will be happy with a 1-1 because of how previous games have gone against Norwich. But the hopeful group, which I'm going to put myself in, will say 2-1 tomorrow. But I don't think it will be a straightforward game.
Yeah, my other colleague Paddy also said 2-1 on that preview show. So maybe now so many people have said it, it feels like it's probably
one way or the other,
impossible.
isn't it? That's the thing. It's going to happen one way or the other.
Yeah, it will definitely be interesting to see how it pans out. Thanks very much for joining us, Lucas. Really appreciate it. If Norwich fans want to find any of your coverage going into this weekend's game, what's the best place to go?
So we've got a podcast called A Cold Wet Tuesday Night, which you sort of spoke about some of the standout players. That's exclusive to BBC Sounds. And then, look, if you're going tomorrow and you're going to be in Stoke and you've got the car on the way home and you want to hear a different perspective, we've got our post-match reaction as well, which will be on BBC Radio Stoke on BBC Sounds. Sometimes it's quite nice to hear what the opposition fans thought. So I'll make sure they're all nice in case there are any Norwich City fans listening.
Nice one. We'll definitely recommend that then. And of course, pinken.com/subscribe if you haven't done already, and you'll have access to all of our content as well from the Bet365 for what's set to be, as I said, a very interesting game. I'm sure I'll see some of you there, and see you after the game in the next episode of Terrace Talk, when hopefully, sorry, Lucas, the feeling is going to be positive after a Norwich.
I understand.
We'll see.